Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can y'all see me okay? I know the light is kind of not ideal.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Yeah, we can see it in here.
Cool.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
How's everybody doing?
Alhamdulillah.
Excellent. I'm gonna wait like I guess 1 minute and start at 10 after. Inshallah. I had some technical difficulties today. Alhamdulillah. Okay. Alhamdulillah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق الناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره المقدار العظيم. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وأزواجه أمهات المؤمنين وذرياته وأهل البيت كما صليت على إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم إني أسألك من كل خير سألك منه محمد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأعوذ بك من كل شر استعاذك منه محمد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم اغفر لنا ما قدمنا وما أخرنا وما أسررنا وما أعلنا وما أنت أعلم منا. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من فتنة المحيا والممات ومن فتنة القبر ومن فتنة الرجال ومن عذاب النار وشر المصير. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد رضي الله عن أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. يا همة الشيخ احضرنا بهذا المحضر والتعد فيه من نظرة تأتينا بها. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Welcome. Alhamdulillah, welcome all to our weekly Maliki Fiqh class. Alhamdulillah. Sister Grizel, I don't think you were here last week, so welcome back. Alhamdulillah. I know I took a long hiatus. I was traveling. I was in Senegal. Alhamdulillah. Good to see everybody back. Sister Miraj, welcome. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So we're going to jump right into it since we're starting a little bit late, and I want to try to end right around 10 o'clock. And I'll try to, end leaving a good amount of time for a question and answer, inshallah ta'ala. So we're on our lesson of Sujood Saw, and I'm going to kind of pick up where we left off, inshallah ta'ala. For those who were here last week, we did a little bit of a sort of general review on Sujood Saw and really just kind of had a question and answer session to kind of get us back in the swing of things. But inshallah ta'ala, today we're going to jump back into the book. So I'm going to read a little bit of what we covered in our last class and then read from there, inshallah ta'ala, and continue. Please let me know if I'm going a little bit too fast, inshallah, and you need me to slow down or you need me to repeat anything at all. So we know what sujood saw is. This is the prostration of forgetfulness that we make to correct a mistake in prayer. If you make a mistake in the fard of a prayer, meaning you omit a fard, then there's no sujood saw for that. You have to correct the fard. And then you'll still likely have to make some sujood saw after salams for all the extra motions that you added to the prayer and correcting the fard. But sujood saw does not fix a fard. You have to correct the fard. Sujood saw is made after salams whenever you add something to the prayer, and is made before salams whenever you omit something from the prayer. So just to read a little bit of what we did in our last class before I left, inshallah ta'ala, as a quick review. Sujood saw, some points we mentioned. Sujood saw is not needed if you miss one sunnah khafifa or a raghiba. Sunnah khafifa is one of the light. Khafifa literally means light. So one of the sunnahs of the prayer is not a sunnah muakkada, not a heavy emphasized sunnah. Heavy emphasized sunnahs are things like saying some Quran after Fatiha in one of the first two rak'ah of the prayer, or sitting in jalsa and saying the tashahhud after the second rak'ah in a prayer that has 3 or more rak'ah. Right? Those are the big sunnah that require sujood saw before salams. If you miss 3 sujood saw before salam, if you miss 3 sunnah of the prayer, 3 sunnahs, even sunnah khafifa, then you have to make sujood saw before salams. But here, the first point they make is that sujood saw is not needed if you miss just one sunnah khafifa or a raghiba. Raghiba is, specifically the raghiba is the qunut, right? The qunut that we make. The Malikis, we make the qunut in Salatul Subh, Salatul Fajr. In the second rak'ah, we make the qunut. It's not obligatory, but it is a very blessed thing to do. It is raghiba, and the raghiba is a category that is not on the same level as a sunnah, but is sort of just below that, right? Something that is very very good to do. Excuse me for the phone ringing. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to those who just joined us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome for those who just joined us. So we said that a sunnah is not, sujood saw is not needed if you miss a sunnah khafifa or a raghiba, meaning the qunut that we make in Salatul Subh. The second point they make is that doing sujood saw when it is not needed before salams cancels the prayer. But if you do it after salams, it doesn't do anything to the validity of the prayer. Why do we say that? Because if you were to do sujood saw before you salamed out of the prayer, without needing to do sujood saw, then you'd be adding something to the prayer that doesn't belong there, right? So to do sujood saw for no reason before salams cancels the prayer. But to do it after salams will not cancel the prayer. Now, practically, what does that mean? That means that you shouldn't make sujood saw before salams just as a way to kind of cover yourself, right? I'm pretty sure I didn't make a mistake in prayer, but I'm gonna make sujood saw before salams anyway. No, that's not the proper, relationship to have with this practice. You only do it when you know that you need it, right? When you have a strong, real indication that you've missed something from the prayer and you need to make sujood saw before salams to fix it. So if you intentionally make it when you don't need to make it, this would actually invalidate the prayer if you made it before salams. After salams, not as big of a deal because you've salamed out of the prayer. The third point they say is to say sujood saw before salams when it should have been said after salams is valid, but they consider it a sin. So if you were supposed to make sujood saw after salams, but instead you made it before salams, it's valid, but it's considered a sin. It's valid because not all of the madahib have the same understanding of how and where you make sujood saw. The Malikis actually are a little bit more sort of nuanced in how we do this. But if you made sujood saw before salams, even if it was for something that you should have made it after salams, it will be considered valid. Why do they say it will be considered some kind of sin? Well, because you should, do the proper you're doing the proper work now to know how to make sujood saw. And once you have the right knowledge, you should take care to implement the knowledge correctly. So the reason it's considered to be a type of sin is because to make it out of order is considered to be kind of careless, right? A type of carelessness. But the prayer would still be valid, and the sujood saw would still cover your mistake in the prayer, inshallah. The fourth point they make is sujood saw after salams is obligatory on you until you die. This is the case of saying it. This is also the case for saying it before when it should go after. So essentially what they're saying is if you owe sujood saw after salams, right, then you owe it until you die. The last point it could be a little bit confusing, but they're just saying that, you know, if you forget to make sujood saw after salams, then as soon as you remember it, you have to make it, right? Even if it's a year later. If somehow a year later you became aware of the fact that you were supposed to make sujood saw after salams for a previous prayer, but you didn't make it, then you should make it at that point. The fifth point they make is that only a general intention is necessary when you say sujood saw late. So let's say you realize, you know, maybe a day after, that's maybe a little bit more realistic. A day after you missed sujood saw after salam. A day later, you remember you made a prayer that should have had sujood saw after salams, and you remember, oh, I didn't make it. You don't have to say, I'm making sujood saw for the prayer of Dhuhr that I missed 24 hours ago. You don't have to do that. Just the general intention of your heart that sujood saw for a previous for a prayer where you previously missed it is sufficient. The sixth point they make here in this section of the book is to say sujood saw after salams when it should have been said before salams. It's considered makruh, but it's acceptable, and the prayer is considered valid, right? It's considered makruh, but it's acceptable, and the prayer is considered valid. So essentially what you have here, a few of these points are indicating that to make sujood saw after salams, when it was supposed to be before salams, or just generally making sujood saw after salams is not, you can say, not as big of an issue because it comes after salams. So if you made it, you know, forgetfully, if you were supposed to make it, if you weren't supposed to make it, but you made it accidentally, doesn't hurt the prayer. If you forgot to make it, you can make it whenever you remember, right? And if you make it after salams when you should have made it before salams, it's only considered makruh, right? It's only considered makruh, right? So if you make sujood saw after salams when it should have been before salams, it's valid. The sujood saw is valid. The prayer is valid. It's just considered makruh. It's disliked because it would have been better if you made it in the right place, right? And this is also helpful because sometimes we forget to make sujood saw before salams. And then we salam out of the prayer, and then we realize, oh, I should have made the sujood saw before salams, and I forgot. What do? You make it after salams, right? You make it after salams. And this also is an explanation, a more thorough explanation of the point. We had point 4 that says sujood saw is obligatory on you until you die. And this is also the case for saying it before when it should go after. So if a person were to, or maybe a better way to say it is for saying it after when it should have gone before. So if you were supposed to make sujood saw after salams and you forgot to make it, you make it whenever you remember it. And if it was supposed to have gone before salams, you can still make it right after the prayer is over, and your prayer is still valid. It's only makruh that you made it out of place. And then the last point, the 7th point they have in this section of the book, they say to make a mistake in any of the things that we just mentioned, any of those 6 things, out of forgetfulness, right, is not considered a sin, right? It's not considered a sin. So if you forgetfully make sujood saw out of place or something like that, it's not considered a sin. You're not held accountable for what you did out of forgetting. Now we're going to go on to the next section, and this is a section that I didn't really cover in our last class because I was a little confused, and I wanted to go and get some clarification before coming back and covering it. So missing sujood saw before salams. missing sujood sahl before salams. What happens if you were supposed to make sujood sahl before salams, but you forget? Bismillah. So the book mentions that when the sujood sahl is not said before salams intentionally, right? It doesn't invalidate the salat, but it's considered a sin, right? And this is, it doesn't invalidate the salat, but it's considered a sin. So if you intentionally made sujood sahl after salams instead of before, right, it would be considered valid, but it would be considered a sin if you intentionally put it in the wrong order, right? The second point they make, is that clear to everybody? Is it not clear to anybody? I say it like that. Okay, alhamdulillah. Excuse me. When the sujood sahl is missed, right, but all of the following conditions are present, I'm gonna word this a little differently than the way it's worded in the book. So give me a minute, because this is if I say it the way it's in the book, I'm worried it might be a little confusing. So if if you were supposed to make sujood sahl but you forgot, then you should say it if all of these conditions are met. Like if you forgot to say it, then you should make up the sujood sahl essentially later after the prayer if all of these conditions are met. So if you're still in the masjid or still in the place where you were when you prayed, a short time has passed, meaning a few moments, not a long time, not 20, 30 minutes, right? And you've only moved a little bit, meaning you're still in the general area where you prayed, right, for your salat, then you should make the sujood sahl, right? You should make the sujood sahl. If one is missing, do not say sujood sahl. Okay, I'm actually gonna shift a little bit. I want to read a section from a translation of Akhtari, because I think this will say it a little bit clearer, inshallah. So, if you forget to make the sujood sahl before salams, right, and only a short time has passed, then you should make the sujood sahl, right? You're supposed to make sujood sahl before salams. You salam out of the prayer. Short time has passed. You should make the sujood sahl. After salams, after, a little bit of time has passed, you should still say it. If a long time has passed, right? If a long time has passed, then you can't just make the sujood sahl up, right? If a long time has passed. If you needed to make sujood sahl before salams because you missed 3 or more sunan, right? Or you missed, actually the major sunan that we have to make it for, saying some Quran after Fatiha, or saying a tashahud after the second rakat in a prayer that has more than 3 rakat, right? These are actually considered compound sunnahs, right? So if you miss one of them, you've actually missed 3 things, right? So in these situations where you needed to have made sujood sahl, if you don't make it and a short time has passed, then you can make it later. If a long time has passed, then you would actually need to remake the prayer, right? So let's say you didn't say some Quran after Fatiha, and you knew that registered in your mind. Oh, I forgot to say some Quran after Fatiha, so I have to make sujood sahl after salam, before salams, and you didn't. But then you remembered a short time after you finished the prayer, then you could go back and make it up. But let's say you remember that the next day. In that case, then you should, actually go back and remake the prayer, right? Because the prayer is considered invalid, right? Assalamu alaikum, welcome. Now, one of the things that I haven't said previously, but I'll say now, you can also make sujood saw if you miss two sunnah khafifa, right? So if you miss two sunnahs, or if you miss a sunnah like reciting, let's say you were supposed to recite out loud and you recited silently, right? That's considered like you missed two sunnahs. You missed the sunnah of reciting out loud, and you missed the sunnah of standing while reciting out loud, right? For some of you, I know that's a review. Some of it might sound a little complicated, but the gist of it is, if you were supposed to recite audibly and you recite, out loud, and you recited silently, right? This is considered you've missed two sunnah, right? Also, if you miss two other sunnah khafifa, right? You can make sujood saw before salams, but it's not obligatory. So in this instance, if you've missed the sujood saw before salams, if you forget it, you don't have to make it up. You don't have to make it up, right? But if you miss the sujood saw before salams for missing three sunnah khafifa, or for missing a sunnah muwakkada, like reciting Quran after Fatiha, or sitting and making a tashahhud after the second rakat, if you miss one of these and you forget to make sujood saw and a long time passes, then you should actually remake the prayer. If you forget to make sujood saw after salams, right, for adding something to the prayer, then you don't have to make the prayer up. Whenever you remember that you missed the sujood saw after salams, you can make the sujood saw after salams, even if a year has passed. So that's a more succinct way of saying it than what it says in our text. So I'm drawing from the text Akhdari, because I think that'll be a little bit more practical to make it clear. Does everything that I've said make sense? Does everybody understand what I've said? Does anybody have any questions about it? Yes. Sidi Hassan, salam alaikum. Sidi Hassan, Haji Hassan, salam alaikum. I see your hand is raised. You have a question?
Yes. Okay. This has to do with the point I think you made about it is if you recite a prayer, or you recite out loud when it's supposed to be silent, all right, that's a need to make the sujood, all right. And if you have to make that before you salam out. Say that again. You said that one more time. If I'm praying, all right, I'm praying Zohar, all right, but I recite the prayer out loud, that is an error, correct?
When you were supposed to recite silently, but you prayed out loud.
Yes.
Yes, that is an error. Yes.
All right. So that error is made up by the sujood that comes before I salam out, or after I.
No. If you were supposed to recite silently, but instead you recited out loud, that's considered adding to the prayer, and you can make sujood saw before that after salams. Because the out loudness, right, the audibility is considered a thing, right? So when it's supposed to be said out loud and you say it silently, it's considered that you omitted something from the prayer. And when it's supposed to be silent, but you said it out loud, it's considered that you added something to the prayer. You follow me?
Yes.
So if it was supposed to be silent, if it was door and you recited out loud, that's considered adding to the prayer. And when you add to the prayer, you make sujood saw when?
After
salams. However, reciting audibly in a silent prayer is considered a very small thing. So you can make sujood saw after salams, but it's like a sunnah. You know, it's not obligatory. If you don't make it after salams, it's not a big thing, because adding audibility is considered to be relatively small. It's considered to be smaller than omitting audibility. So if you omit audibility, if you were supposed to recite audibly but you recited silently, you should make sujood saw before salams. Like we said, it's still considered to be a small enough mistake that if you forgot, it wouldn't invalidate the prayer. You follow me? Like if you were supposed to say some Quran after Fatiha and you forgot to do it, right? And a day passed and you remembered, oh, I forgot to make, some Quran after Fatiha, and too much time has passed for me to make up my sujood saw, then you got to remake the prayer. But if you say, oh, I was supposed to pray that prayer out loud and I recited silently, and a long time has passed, you don't have to worry about it. You follow me?
I follow you. All right. So
they're both considered small mistakes that don't, if you don't make the sujood saw, it doesn't invalidate the prayer. But if you recite out silently when it's supposed to be out loud, it's good for you to make sujood saw before salams, right? If you remember to, right? If you recite out loud when it's supposed to be silent, some say it's good if you make sujood saw after salam. Some say it's nothing because it's such a small mistake. You follow me?
Yes.
Got it.
All right. I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
All right, because what you just said is that the person misses, if he misses saying a surah following the Fatiha in a prayer, all right, and he misses that, then he has to make salams before he salams out. Does he have to go back and fix that? Or he just makes the salams before he salams out?
Say the mistake one more time.
He makes, okay. All right. If a person during Fajr prayer, all right, he omits the surah that follows the prayer.
Yes.
All right.
It follows Fatiha.
He follows the Fatiha. I'm sorry, he follows Fatiha. So he has to make the sujood prior to salamming out. And that would fix that. Yes. All right. However, if he doesn't, and he remembers in a short time, he can make the sujood. He can make the sujood, and that would cover him. Yes. Even if he remembers after he salams out, if he remembers in a short time, he can make it. He can still make it, and it will cover him. Yes. However, if he remembers at Asr, right, he would have to make that Fajr over again. Yes. So would he make so he's already made Asr? He would just have to make the Fajr up. He wouldn't have to remake Dhuhr. Is that your question? No. Okay. No. And he's already made Asr. Yeah. So would he wait until Maghrib? Oh, to make it? He would do it right away. Or does he make it right after Asr? He will make it right after Asr. Anytime you have a short number of prayers to make up, 1 prayer, 2 prayer, 3 prayers, you don't pay any attention to what time it is. You just pray as soon as you're able to pray. Okay. If you have a short number of prayers to make and you remember it when you're performing surgery, then I would say wait till you finish performing the surgery. Or if you have a small number of prayers to make and you're in the middle of eating and you're so hungry that if you don't finish eating, you won't be able to focus on the prayer. You finish those things. But other than that, if you have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 prayers to make up, you should make them right away. You don't pay attention to whether the sun is rising or the sun is setting or it's after Asr or nothing like that. You just make them. Now, if you have more than that, if you have a day's worth of prayers to make up or a week's worth of prayers to make up or something like that, then you can wait and pray, at a time when it's easy for you, and you would avoid, the times of where we're told not to make nafil prayer. Okay, but we're only speaking in the case of if you miss reciting a surah after after you make Fatiha. That's you know.
So
we're considering
I'm giving you too much information.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that part. Okay.
Yeah. So if you forgot to make a surah after Fatiha, if you forgot to make recite a surah after Fatiha or some verses from Quran after Fatiha, right? Then you should make sujood salah before salams. This is actually a great kind of case study for us to follow through, right? Now, if you forget to make sujood salah before salams and you remember right after you salam out, then you make sujood salah after salams. So no negative, nothing bad on you. It's not considered a sin or anything like that, right? You make it, if you remember right after you salam out, then you just make sujood salah after salams. Let's say you remember, I'll say a couple of minutes after you salamed out of the prayer, and you're still kind of sitting, maybe you're doing your dhikr or something like that, then make it when you remember it, right? And you can make it right then and there when you remember it, and that covers it. But let's say you don't remember until 10 minutes later. You've gotten up, you started to make some food or do something else, and then you remember, oh, I forgot to make sujood salah before salams for omitting a surah after Fatiha. Then you should make the prayer again. Let's say you remember after you've made asr, right? Oh, I never made my sujood salah after salams, and it was for omitting a surah after Fatiha. That's a sunnah muakkada. That's a heavy thing. You should make the prayer again. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Now, just as a word of caution, don't let this information cause you to become obsessive where you start agonizing, about a prayer you made last week. That's not what this information is supposed to do, right? My advice, I mean, some different teachers have different approaches. Some teachers, like my teacher, he understood that people like to cut corners. So he would teach in a way to that some people like to cut corners. So he would teach in a way to kind of make sure you don't have a chance to cut corners, right? I sometimes err on the side of, I know some people can become obsessive over things, right? And so, this fiqh is balanced. Islam is, what this is the path of wasatiyah. This is balance, right? So you don't want to be cutting corners, but then we also don't want to create a situation where we have this kind of, where we're agonizing over every little thing. The reality is we learn this information and we apply it as best as we can. And ultimately, we're still going to make some mistakes because that's the nature of the human being. And that's why we have istighfar. And that's why the books say things like Allah doesn't hold you accountable, generally speaking, for the thing that you did out of forgetfulness or out of compulsion. Like if somebody put a gun to your head and say you got to do this or that, right? So don't, if you don't have a strong, clear reason to think that you've missed something from the prayer or that you've made a mistake, then you assume that you have not, right? But once you know, if you know you have certainty that you made a mistake in the prayer, that you forgot something, and you didn't properly, make up for it, then you apply this information to make up for it, whether it be making the sujood salah when you remember to make it, or remaking the prayer if you have to remake the prayer. Is that clear?
Clear.
Alhamdulillah. Mr. Tasneem, I see you've had your hand up for a while. Bismillah. What was your question?
Yes, it's just a really brief question. While we were on this subject, I was wondering if you're making a silent prayer and you accidentally start reciting out loud, does it matter how much if you catch yourself after the first 2 words, does it matter how much you recite out loud, or does it apply regardless?
Yeah, that's a good question. So once again, if you're reciting a silent prayer and it's supposed to be silent and you recite it out loud, that's such a small thing that it really doesn't require anything, right? It really doesn't require anything. Some will make sujood salah after salams, but it really doesn't even require that. So if you are making dhuhr and you start reciting silently, really it's enough that when you remember, you stop and you continue reciting silently, right? That's sufficient, right? And if it's a small amount, then as soon as you remember, you should start to recite silently as you were supposed to, right? If you were reciting a prayer that was supposed to be aloud, right, and you were reciting it silently, then when you remember, if you remember in the midst of the rakah, right, like if you only recite a little bit aloud, like just a few verses, and you remember, then it would be sufficient, it would be acceptable if as soon as you remembered, you just recited silently from the beginning. Like let's say recited aloud from the beginning. So let's say you make a salatul sup, right? And you start off and you remember at some point, oh, this is salatul sup, I should be reciting out loud. Then you just recite it out loud. You don't, if you catch it before you go into ruku, then you can simply recite out loud, and you don't have to worry about making sujood sound. Did you follow me? Alhamdulillah, I see the heart. So
yes, that helped. Thank you. Asma said I took her question.
Oh, mashallah. Alhamdulillah. That was a good question. That's how questions be. That's why I love it when y'all ask questions, because 9 times out of 10, somebody else had the question too, right? And sometimes they didn't even realize they had the question. Sometimes somebody asks a question and somebody else is like, I had that question too. I kind of didn't realize that I wasn't clear about that, but the question helped me get clarity. So when you ask questions, you're not just benefiting yourself, you're benefiting everybody. Alhamdulillah. So I'm just going to finish up this section, and then inshallah we'll continue with some more questions and answers if people have questions. I did want to read this section from the book. It actually gives a definition of what they mean by a short amount of time. So according to the opinion of Dr. Suleiman Dunya, Rahmatullahi Sheikh Amin, may Allah preserve him, they treated a short time as basically enough time to make takbir, al-fatiha, a surah, and to begin the bow for ruku. So essentially like the first half of a rakah is how they would treat a short amount of time, right? I would say you don't have to be so precise, but a short amount of time is, maybe the time for a rak'ah. It's not 5 minutes, right? It's a short amount of time. And I think there's different opinions about that. I've heard different teachers say different things in their classes, but our teachers, they kind of had a more conservative, for lack of a better word, or a more careful view, a more cautious view, where they treated a short amount of time as a very short amount of time. And this is when we talk about a short amount of time being how much time can pass after which you still can make sujood as-sahl. The sujood as-sahl that should have come before salams, you can make it even after you forgot to make it after salams and still keep the prayer. Okay, missing sujood as-sahl after salams. We covered that. If you miss sujood as-sahl after salams, if you intentionally missed it, then like if you were supposed to make sujood as-sahl after salams and you left it, the prayer would still be valid. So let's say you added an extra rakat to the prayer and you knew that and you didn't make sujood as-sahl after salams. The prayer will be valid, but it will be considered sinful. The way it says in the book, you'll be punished. So, unless you address it, you'll be held accountable for that. You have to, that will be in your account when you go to meet Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, right? If you miss sujood as-sahl after salams and you forgot to make it, then when you remember it, you should make it. And it doesn't matter when you remember, you can remember a week later and it's still valid. If you forgot to make sujood as-sahl after salams and you never remembered, the prayer would still be valid and you will not be considered to have committed any sin, right? If you were supposed to make Assalamu alaikum. Sister Rahima, how you doing, auntie? Welcome. Alhamdulillah. So if you were supposed to make sujood salah, let's say that you did an extra rakat in the prayer, and you forgot to make sujood salah after salams, and you remember it a day later, then you can make it whenever you remember it, and it will be accepted. Let's say you never remembered, you'd be forgiven for it, inshallah. It would not be considered sinful or anything like that. So now the next section, they're going to talk about doubt. And I'm going to go ahead and start it. They define doubt. And the book says, what if you have doubt about whether or not you made a mistake in your prayer? So here's how they define doubt. They say doubt occurs when you have two ideas. One idea is that you did something, and the other idea is that you did not do something. And both of those ideas are equal, right? If you have, if you think you might have, wa alaikum salam, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, alhamdulillah, let's say that you remember that you weren't sure if you made sajda, right, in a given rakah. And you're 50-50, that's considered doubt. You're 50-50, I might have did it, I might not have did it. You have both ideas, right? That's considered doubt. It says if one idea is stronger than the other, then that means the stronger one is what you think, is how they word it here in the book, and the weaker one is what you imagine, right? So if you're pretty sure that you made sajda, but the thought comes in your mind that maybe you didn't, that thought is considered something you imagine and something that you can cast aside, right? So the weaker idea is considered what you imagine, right? And then it says if you have three ideas, like maybe you did it, maybe you didn't do it. I don't know what the third idea would be, but then it says neither of these thoughts are doubt or thinking. This is all imagined. So in other words, if your mind's all over the place, right, and you find yourself like, maybe I did it, maybe I didn't do it, maybe I kind of did it, then this is just something that your mind is imagining. Your mind is kind of playing a trick on you, so to speak, and you should kind of just ignore all of that doubt. It could be like they call waswas, like whisper. But in any case, if you're not sure whether you did something or didn't do it, if one idea is stronger than the other, then you generally take that idea, right? If they're 50-50, you really aren't sure, then you treat that as doubt. And when you have that doubt, that real doubt, where you're, as they say, 50-50, the thought that you did it and the thought that you didn't do it, the thought that you might have done it and might not have done it are equal, then you assume that you did not do the thing that you're in doubt about. In other words, let's say it's a sajda. If you're not sure whether you did the sajda or didn't do the sajda, then you assume that you did not do it, right? And you do what you need to do to make up for that mistake, that omission in the prayer. I'll stop there because I need to end at 10 o'clock. So we'll open up the floor for questions, inshallah ta'ala. And when we come back next week, we're going to talk more about forgetting and doubt, inshallah ta'ala. And we'll move toward finishing this section of the book, inshallah ta'ala. Haji Ishaq, assalamu alaikum, rahmatullah. Bismillah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah, how you feeling?
Alhamdulillah, man, how you doing?
Alhamdulillah, good.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So, question about, this is not really related to today, but it's about wudu in salat, all right? About, there's a narration, and forgive me, I don't have the exact word, but it speaks something about if as far as if you think that you break when, if it's not two of the three, then you continue with your salat and stuff like this. What is the opinion on that? What is the fiqh ruling?
Right. So the opinion that I have from Sheikh Amin, hold on. Yeah, sorry about that. What we learned from Sheikh Amin is that okay, how do you know whether or not you've broken wind? I'll say this: sometimes you know you broke wind,
Right.
If you have certainty about something, you operate on that certainty, right? So let's establish that. Let's say you don't have certainty. You're not sure. Well, what are the ways that you know that you broke wind? It's if you felt it, you heard it, or you smelt it, right? They say if two of those things are present, then you consider that you broke wind. If only one of them is present, then you consider that you didn't. So let's break this down practically. Again, sometimes you know you broke wind. You may have only felt it, but you know you did it. In that case, go renew your wudu, right? But sometimes you have the feeling, right? But you don't hear anything, you don't smell anything, and the feeling is so subtle that you're not really sure if you did it. You follow what I'm saying? Hopefully everybody can kind of relate to what I'm saying from experience. Sometimes you have the feeling, you feel something in your stomach, right? And maybe you feel something in your rear area, but it's slight enough to where you're not really sure if you actually broke wind or if this is just kind of a stomach bubbling. Maybe you almost did, but you're not sure, right? In that case, you say, well, did I hear anything? Did I smell anything? And if the answer is no, I didn't hear anything, no, I didn't smell anything, then you treat your wudu as being intact, right? But let's say you have that feeling and you heard something. Well, that thing you heard is confirmation. Or you smelled something, that's confirmation. That means your wudu is broken. You treat that as your wudu is broken, you go make wudu. Let's say you're by yourself and you get a foul smell, but you didn't hear anything and you didn't smell anything, right? Then you still have your wudu. The smell must be coming from somewhere else, right? Because if you didn't feel anything or hear anything, then just the smell by itself is not enough, right? Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
Alhamdulillah, yes. Now, does the removal of doubt, is it more strenuous if you're leading salah?
And I just see the question you typed in the chat too. So to just give voice to something that Sidi Ishaq said in the chat. So if you have doubt, you have to remove the doubt, right? If you are in doubt about whether or not you did something, a forward action in the prayer, then you assume that you didn't do it and you go back and do it to make sure you did it, to remove the doubt. If you're not sure whether or not you have wudu, right? Let's say you're in the prayer and you're like, I don't remember whether or not I made wudu. And you think about it and you can't remember anything in your mind to kind of confirm that you do have wudu, then you assume that you don't have wudu, right? And you go back and make wudu. You have to remove the doubt, right? These different things that we talk about, like, did you hear something or smell something? Do you have a 50-50 notion that you made this act in the prayer, or do you have a stronger sense that you made it? These are tools that we use to prevent ourselves from becoming obsessive and being victim by, I won't say obsessive in this case. These are things that we do to avoid waswas, to avoid the whispers of shaitan, a'udhu billah, to make us have doubt, to create doubt when we shouldn't have doubt, right? To create doubt when there's really no doubt, right? When we really have a level of certainty, the shaitan, a'udhu billah, will come, and sometimes we'll imagine things to cause us to have doubt. So we want to eliminate that, right? But once we've eliminated that, if we still have doubt, then we have to remove the doubt, right? Now, to answer your question, I would say that the doubt is as important to remove whether you're leading prayer or praying by yourself. That's my, I don't know, maybe some of the people with more knowledge may have a different, more nuanced view. But even if you're praying by yourself, the prayer is an obligation, I would say that, you have to remove the doubt, and the obligation to remove the doubt is just as strong for the person who's praying by themselves as it is for the imam. That's my notion, right? My understanding, right? I've never asked any of our teachers that specific question, but even if you're praying by yourself, you still have an obligation to remove the doubt. So it still is in this level of being obligatory, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, mate. And the reason the question comes from, because sometimes there's increased. Shaitan will whisper a little bit more and says, "Man, you sure? Because you leading other people in prayer. You know, their prayer might not be valid. You know, and so it's how do we eliminate that type of doubt? I guess that's the real question, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. That's a really good question. So the thing that you have to remember is exactly what you said, that when you don't have a strong reason to have doubt, then you should be suspicious of the shaitan, a'udhu billah, creating the doubt in your mind. So even if you're the imam, you want to remember to yourself, okay, I can't just give into every single thought, every single imagined doubt that comes into my mind, because if the shaitan, a'udhu billah, realizes that he can get us like that, then he'll keep trying to get us like that, right? One of the things that we'll come to in we might have already covered it in the lesson, but if not, we'll cover it soon, maybe next week. If you have doubt every day, like if you have doubt, if you have doubt every day, if doubt is a daily thing or a very consistent thing, right? Then the books actually tell you to ignore the doubt, right? And there's different ways you can ignore the doubt. Sometimes ignoring the doubt means just ignoring it altogether. Sometimes it means always presuming that you have omitted the thing that there's doubt about and just covering yourself to be safe. But in any case, you ignore the doubt because you don't want to, the shaitan, the way we've been taught is that if you listen to him, then he will keep coming at you. And his ability to create doubt in our minds will become bigger. If we ignore him, then eventually he'll leave us alone, so to speak. In terms of that issue, he'll find another way because shaitan, a'udhu billah, is always on his job. But if we listen to him when he comes and tries to create doubt, then he'll continue to try to create doubt in our prayer. And one more thing I'll add to that, to add another tool. If you're the imam, you don't want to create unnecessary doubt or discomfort in the minds of the people following you, right? So, I've been in a situation where, I'm praying, I'm leading the prayer, and the thought will come to me like, "Oh, did you do that?" And I'll say, "No, I didn't make that mistake in prayer. I have a stronger sense that I did the thing than my notion that I omitted the thing. So my prayer is valid. I treat that as an imagined thing. It's not real doubt." And then I think, yeah, but you're praying behind people. And then the next thought, you're praying in front of people, you're leading people in prayer. And then the next thought for me is, okay, all the more reason not to give into the doubt, to cause everybody else to have unnecessary movements in their prayer or unnecessary doubt or suspicion about the validity of their prayer, all because of the waswas of the shaitan. You following what I'm saying?
Yes, alhamdulillah. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. We're actually going to have to stop there. I see we have somebody else who just joined. Welcome. I'm sorry we're getting ready to end, but may Allah reward you for coming. May Allah reward everybody for coming. This class should be up on YouTube on the Ruhul Adab page, so you can always go back and look at it to catch anything that you missed. And for the most part, we do that now with all of the classes. So if ever you missed the class, just go to Ruhul Adab group, right? If somebody can type that in the chat, inshallah, that might be helpful for people. But it's Ruhul Adab group, RUHULADAB group, all one word, on YouTube, and you can see this class and the back classes. Alhamdulillah, may Allah reward all of you. May Allah forgive us all. May Allah bless us for our intention to try to obtain this knowledge of how to worship him. May Allah give us tawfiq in obtaining that knowledge. May Allah give us tawfiq in implementing that knowledge, and give us ilmul nafiya, knowledge that is beneficial. May Allah bless us with success in our work to spread the knowledge with his permission, whether it be through our families, whether it be if Allah puts us in a situation where we're teaching it, whether it be answering questions if people come to us with questions, or whether it be simply implementing this knowledge and the people around us seeing us implement this knowledge. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us, and may He forgive us for the mistakes that we make anywhere along the way in that process. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من فتنة المحيا والممات ومن فتنة القبر ومن فتنة المسير الرجال ومن عذاب النار وشر المصير. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من الهم والحزن ونعوذ بك من العجز والكسل ونعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل ونعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you, Jamaat. Inshallah, we'll see you next week. Sidi Hassan, I see your message. No, I have not spoken with either of them, inshallah, but I'm going to give them both a call today, inshallah ta'ala, and I'll check in with you later this evening, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Sidi Ishaq.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Sidi Ishaq, I'm about to call you for literally a quick 1 minute call if you're free, inshallah. So I'm calling you now.
Inshallah. 1 minute.
Say again?
Inshallah. 1 minute.
Okay, yep.
Say, give me like 1 minute. I'm in
Oh,
bed.
okay.
Give me like 1 minute, inshallah.
No problem. So.